Good evening, everybody.
An interesting client / guest here last week, and we had limited time about an interesting subject, and we brought him back in, Charles Slepian. So I used to think of the term frack have to do with infiltrating underground and pushing more oil out so that we have cheap energy, but frack is actually a company out of Long Island that stands for Foreseeable Risk Analysis Center. And Charles Slepian, the founder of the organization, has been spending his life helping businesses and organizations and government agencies and quasi-government agencies identify and uncover and mitigate risk out there. And one of the industries that he has spent his lifetime with has been the aviation industry. And we started a conversation last week about all the different things that he does within the aviation industry to help make it safer for people like us to travel, which you're going in a couple of days.
A few weeks.
So we brought him back because we were like in the middle of this conversation and cut him off. and we were talking about the different things that he does specifically to help, the airport industry and the airline industry. And without giving away too many secrets, I thought I was bringing him back today to maybe give us a little more specifics without giving away the secret sauce of things that are important that he deals with to try and get us to be a safer country with
now that I'm totally paranoid to fly because I'm worrying about
he left the show last week as saying that still flying is the safest mode of travel in the world. Is that not correct, Charles?
Absolutely.
Welcome,
correct.
Charles.
Thanks. But I'm not worried about something like that happening again, but I'm worried about my mother always used to tell me, make sure you always have clean underwear and clean socks. Well, you should
always make sure and clean your nails.
Yeah. So, what happens now if, somebody, with all this stuff going on, my suitcase could potentially be, stolen. And then what do I do? And then I have only a pair of underwear that I have on now.
Well, Charles, what's your advice for a guy like Rich?
Buy insurance.
And welcome back, Charles.
Actually, I do. Whenever I fly, I have life insurance that kicks in. I pay automatically, have for years. And it's also lost baggage insurance. So if I'm worried about not having enough underwear, I can go right to an airport store and buy it and be reimbursed for it.
So there obviously there's lost baggage insurance, and so I'm gonna take a flight and I'm gonna go from here. I'm gonna go into West Palm, and if something happened, my suitcase got hijacked or stolen, you're telling me that I'm kind of like out of luck, and I gotta, if I don't have that insurance, am I kind of like I got dirty bloomers?
Well, you're not out of luck, but you may have dirty bloomers for 48 hours or 24 hours or for as long as it takes for them to find what's left of the contents of your bag and ship it to you wherever you are.
I don't want to get off topic. I want to spend time specifically with what Charles has been doing for all these years. So your main focus is in helping the organization, the airline industry, the airport industry, the port authority and whatnot, develop ways to make it safer for us to all travel.
Well, once in a while you get a client that really is a significant leader in the aviation industry. And I was fortunate enough to be retained by a major international airline in New York. I was brought in because the new owner of the airline had no experience in the aviation industry at all, but he knew that things weren't right. But he didn't know what was going wrong. And you know what? In most of our businesses, we really don't know what's going wrong until we have to make a call to our insurance broker and say, hey, I just took a beating. Can you help me here? And the point being is you have to admit that you don't know what's going on in your workplace. You don't know the impact it's having on your customers, and you have to find out. And so what I did with that airline was I immediately retained former and current law enforcement officers in all of its major cities. And I said, I want you to go out on the ramp and find out what's going on the ramp. Go basically undercover. You're here working as a ramp serviceman, you're here working in the commissary, and so on. Go out and find out what's going on. It's overwhelming what was going on. But you had to be there in order to see it. I didn't know it in advance. I didn't wake up one morning and say, this is what's happening in the aviation industry. I got people out there to tell me that. And then I did something that I thought at the time was very interesting. I got former thieves who worked for that airline and wanted to go back to work for the airline.
Did you put out a? You went to
he went to the state penitentiary of New York.
Or did you put an ad in the New York Times? Thieves.
An interesting point is that these people don't get prosecuted, and business crimes generally are not being prosecuted. You take the fact that you've got somebody in the workplace who's stealing some items from the workplace to the district attorney's office, and they say, we are not your security department. You have to do that yourself. And they're right. They're there for the public at large. And so you've got to take on that responsibility.
Yeah, and I wouldn't suspect that the airline industry would want to focus in and let people know that that's an issue, because then the public
it's an
knows
exposure issue, sure.
You're absolutely right. And one of the reasons I used the police officers is because I could trust them. And I knew them. And they were in different cities around the country, including Los Angeles and Dallas and Chicago and so on. And they went out into the workplace and they found out. And how did they find out? They got guys they were arrested in the past. And they said, I understand you're working at the airport today. Can you help me? And they'd say, well, can you help me? They'd send them to me and I'd say, you want your job back? I'm going to give you your job back under certain conditions. And you have to provide me with a list of names and places of things that are happening. And they did. They loved it. They loved ratting out their friends because they felt they were biting into their competition at the same time. And the things that came in were frightening. They were frightening to me because the employer didn't know what he had working out there. And unfortunately, that's still the case.
So for you specifically, do you think you're as successful as you are because this is an instinct that you have? Or do you think you're successful because this is kind of like you've been through this a few times and it's kind of the experience? Is it the instinct, the experience, both? What do you think it is?
It's a combination. A lot of it comes from the fact that I was born and raised in the South Bronx. And,
Talk about experience.
The old story. My mother was a single parent, and she worked. I had an older brother who, when I was 10, he joined the Air Force, and that was that. I was on my own. I learned it in the street, and I learned either to become a good crook or study in school, which is what I did. And I became a school teacher and an attorney and all the rest of that good stuff. And as my mother always said to me, you're lucky you were born in America.
So true.
And she was not, nor was my father, as a matter of fact. But the point is, choices that you make. When I walk in the street today, never changes. My eyeballs are going from side to side. I always know what's going on around me. I always can tell you if the street has changed in one way or another. That's instinctive.
You're not one of those people that are walking around with their cell phone in their face and not looking in front of them.
No.
It's a trick, because there's some foreseeable risk.
No, I am not, and I get very upset by people who do.
So other than the typical, if you see something, say something, I'm going to the airport next week. I'm going to be flying. What are some of the things that, now all of a sudden my antennas are up. I need to know what's going on. What are some of the things I should maybe take, look around for to kind of make myself a little bit more aware of what's happening?
Well, you want to look at who's on the flight with you. And people do that. They look who is also traveling on that particular flight. And you have to be sensitive to people who've had too much to drink, because airlines make money selling liquor. And they usually sell too much before they realize it. And then fights break out. And
there's an epidemic of that these days.
Yes, and shouting going back and forth. And if you're sensitive to noise, which I am, you tend to get, I don't know, you get ticked off and you want to get into it yourself. And so you've got to know who's around you. And if it becomes too much for you to fly in the back of the plane, save your money and fly in front of the plane, where sometimes it's better. Not always, but sometimes. So look who's on the flight. See if there are children on the flight. See if you're sitting next to children and if that's going to upset you. See if you can change your seat. These are the kinds of things that you do so that the trip becomes worthwhile to you. You don't want a nervous breakdown in flight. And never, ever, ever pick a flight with a flight attendant, because we have something called the Patriot Act. And if you interfere with transportation, it's a federal crime. And a lot of people find that out by not listening to the flight attendant who says, listen, you've got to quiet your child, or you got to put your breast back into your bra because we don't allow that here in the plane. I mean, these are the kinds of things that occur. And so know what's going on there. Don't pick on the flight attendant, who, by the way, is nowadays, I feel terrible for them. They fly more hours than should be asked of any human being.
But your expertise is more behind-the-scenes stuff that we don't even see.
Well,
I'm assuming. Right?
Well, that has to do with the training of employees and the training of supervisors and the mandatory enforcement of rules. If you don't enforce the rules, you're a co-conspirator with that which
you're swimming up the wrong string these days, because I don't know that we're enforcing any rules anymore on anything.
That is a very serious problem.
Well, it's like we're back to living in the wild west over here. We got people all over New York City, and I won't get political, but I think I've seen more bums than I've seen in a long time. And walking into the studio, I got like a half a buzz going on this evening, because it's like I smell more pot in here than I couldn't believe. I was like, oh my God.
They got those outdoor urinals they call flower pots. It's like unbelievable what's going on over here these days. It's like crazy.
We can make an excuse for bad conduct, and we frequently do that. But bad conduct very often rises to the level of criminal conduct, and that's what you've got to avoid.
So, real quickly, we have 2 minutes. If I have or I am in charge, or I'm running, or I'm some senior level executive at some airline, what's something that you could give me a tip that you could give them that would help them kind of minimize or help them out with some foreseeable risk? What should they be looking for?
Do an evaluation of those things that have upset your business, whether it be from the point of view of your customers or the point of view of your workers. Do that evaluation. Then come up with what you think you can do to correct it. And then after you do that, call me and let me come in and help you do it.
And how can they get in touch with you, Charles?
Well, I'm all over the place. My phone number is listed, Foreseeable Risk Analysis Center, but go to the website. Go to the Facebook page.
Website is frac.com. FRAC.com.
Go to the Facebook page. Same thing. And look me up there. Contact me by email, charles.slepian@frac.com. I've had it for years. Then there's a telephone number, 503-804-3138. And don't worry about it costing you a toll call. We don't have those things anymore. My company was Oregon-based, and it still is Oregon-based, although most of my activity takes place here in New York. But don't try to do everything yourself, because it took me 40 years to learn how to do what I do. And if you don't have 40 years to spend the way I did at the time, give me a call. Happy to help.
So what better to have on your side than a street-smart guy from the Bronx, New York, who's also an attorney. And if you have any aviation needs, or you have an airline and you're an executive, this guy's definitely worth the call.
Any industry. Aviation is his love, but trucking, aviation, transportation, financial, any corporation, everybody has potential risk out there.
There's not a hotel in this town, a major hotel in this town, that I haven't done work for over the years.
So, listen, there's the credibility for you. So
visit frac.com, FRAC.com.
All right.
Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you, Charles. Listen, exciting to have him in again. Excited. I love having him in here.